Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of our Bubble Talks. I'm so happy that you guys made it here today. I hope you had a wonderful week. What are you guys drinking? Today I have a wonderful fresh drink. Nice and fruity. It is grapefruit green tea with grapefruit jelly and low sugar. Delicious. One of my favorite fruits is the ruby red grapefruit. All right, what are you guys drinking? You guys are probably just posting up in the room what you're drinking, whether it's water or Sprite, lemonade, whatever it is. Or you have some bubble tea with you guys too, right? Just want to give a shout out for last week's winners of the Bubble Talk. I hope you guys enjoyed your bubble tea that you got from last week. See the pictures over there? Cool. And those of you who know that if you are watching this video right now, it means that I am no longer in the country, just taking a quick break, and this is a pre-recorded message, but we will still give out free bubble tea. We'll still give it out. There are going to be people here on the live channel making sure that you guys get your free bubble teas. All right, so today's topic is a very interesting one. It is coping with grief, okay? And grief is like, I want you guys to understand that this is something that everyone is going to go through. Everyone will go through it in life no matter what. You're all going to go through this. So even if you haven't had any big grief yet, it is something you will go through. And many of us know people who have been through some type of grief, all right? So everyone, grab your bubble teas, sit back and relax, and we're going to enjoy another Bubble Talk about how to cope with grief. So, let's get into it. In life, grief hits us, right? And, grief is just going to hit you like a wall. And there are several reasons why large or big grief comes into our life, but it usually has to do with loss, like losing something that's really big in your life. And three of the biggest things people struggle with when it comes to grief is relationships, right? Losing, the relationship, you have a bad breakup or something along that line, or you lose a job, or you lose someone you love, right? And those are the three big ones that everyone kind of goes through, right? So these big griefs in life, these losses really hurt us inside, and people struggle for a long time. And that's why people have a really hard time dealing with it, especially when it comes mentally and also emotionally. It's a very difficult thing to overcome, right? And this is why we need to learn today of how to cope with this type of grief. Now, when we go through any type of grief, if you ever had a really bad breakup, you've been heartbroken, if you've ever been in a situation you were fired from your job, you don't even know why, or, there's the loss of a loved one. For some of you have already lost grandparents, right? Some of you may have already lost parents, and of course they're friends and family. I know in my life when I was 17 years old, 16, 17 years old, 3 of my friends got into a car accident and 2 of them died, right? And this is when I was 17. So this was a time where I was really able to experience in the fullest way. So first I'm going to talk to you about is the 5 stages of grief. And this is what everyone's going to go through. And I'm going to tell you what people are thinking in those moments. So if you're in grief, or if you have friends in grief, you can kind of tell what stage they're in. So the first stage of grief, guess what it is? It's called the denial stage. Denial, or it's kind of that this has got to be a mistake stage, which means that in these situations, you think it's a mistake, you don't believe it, okay? So if you just have a really, really bad breakup, super bad breakup, you're gonna be like, oh no, it's not that bad, so you're denying it, right? Oh, it's not that bad, yeah, they'll get over it by tomorrow. No, everything will be fine tomorrow, right? That's denying it. If you lose your job, it's like, no. You don't know how valuable I am to this company. They will call me back tomorrow. They will call me back and they'll ask for me to come back. Or if it comes to death of a loved one, you deny it just straight out, no, this can't be true. There's got to be a mistake. No, it's got to be a mistake. And that's the first stage, which is denial. The second stage we move into is anger, okay? Anger, we all know what anger is. So let's take a look at that first situation when you have a bad breakup, okay? In this breakup, when you're angry, it's like, I hate you. I hate her so much. She's nothing to me. She's nothing. You have this anger towards them, right? When it's losing a job, you're like, I hate the boss. The boss always treated me like this. I hope this company dies, right? And then when you have anger and it comes to a death of someone close to you, the anger is like, man, they should have taken care of themselves better. If they stopped doing these types of things, they wouldn't have died, right? So you kind of have this anger towards that person or the situation. Then we move on to the third stage, and the third stage is called bargaining. Like bargaining. What are you bargaining? Well, have you ever heard this before or said this before? If you have a bad breakup in a relationship, oh, if I just called her more, we wouldn't have broken up. Oh, if I just bought her like dinner at least once a week, we wouldn't have broken up. Oh, if I just, during that time, if I just would have gone with her to that movie, we wouldn't have broken up. That's bargaining. It's bargaining with yourself. Oh, if I did this, it wouldn't have happened, right? What if it's your job? Oh, if only I worked more weekends, then they would see my value. Oh, if only they saw this. That's bargaining. And of course, when it comes to a death of someone you really, really love, it's, some people can actually get into the, if only I picked up the phone. If only I met them that night, they wouldn't have died. If only I hung out with them, right? And we kind of bargain in our heads of why this happened, and we're kind of, oh, if only, then it wouldn't have happened, right? And of course, that leads into guilt, which leads into the fourth stage, which is depression, right? And we all know how bad depression is. And when you have a bad breakup, what happens? What's the point of going on? Why do I have to keep living? What's the point of life itself? Right? What if it's a job? What do I do from now on? What do I do? I have no idea what to do now. Right? And you get depressed. Well, you wouldn't say it like that. You'd be like, what can I do now? I don't know. I don't think I can do anything else. And of course, if there's a death of a loved one, it's like, I'm nothing without them. Oh, without them, I can't live, right? And this is a sign of depression when you're very, very sad and it gets to a point where you're looking at this and you can't move forward, right? And that's the fourth stage, which is depression. And of course, the fifth one, which is the last one, we call it acceptance. Now, acceptance is when you kind of go full circle and you finally realize it's like, okay, you've accepted it. It's fine, right? And if it's a broken relationship, what do you say? Wow, this was better for the both of us, right? You have that kind of feeling like, oh, it was better for both of us, right? Or if it's a job, you know what? It's an opportunity to start again. Now I can do what I really want to do. Right? You've accepted it. Or if it's a death in the family, it's like you realize the memories you made together. It's like, oh, I was so blessed to spend that much time with them. Oh, we have so many good memories, man, and those memories will live on in my heart. And that is when you finally accept that loss that you went through. And these are the five stages of grief that people usually go through. And you can kind of tell where people are, right? You could just listen to how they talk, or listen to how you think, or listen to how you talk to people. And then you know, oh, I'm in stage 3. Oh, I'm in stage 4. Oh, no, I've overcome it. I'm in stage 5. So we're going to get into the question now is, how do we cope with grief, right? How do we deal with this, okay? How can we cope with grief? And I'm going to give you some advice on how to go through it more smoothly, okay? So if you listen carefully, what I'm saying is more smoothly. It doesn't mean we're going to stop it. It means more smoothly, which comes to my first advice to you guys is, you can't stop grief. Grief is something that is going to happen no matter what. Right? It's almost like when you're crying. Can you just stop yourself in the middle, like, can you just like this, stop crying? Okay, stop crying. Like, can you do that? You can't stop it, right? It's like you can't stop yourself in mid-laugh. You can't stop yourself in mid-crying. You can't stop yourself in mid, depressionary thoughts. You can't stop it. One thing you have to realize first is, in your mind, you have to understand is, some things are inevitable in life. It's a normal, you can't stop this from actually happening. There's a famous Bible verse, there's a song made out of this too. It's in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1 and 2. Very, very famous verse. It basically says, there is a time for everything in life, and part of it is death. There's a time for people to be born. There's a time for people to die. It's something that shouldn't surprise you, like, oh, people die? Right? It shouldn't surprise us. It's a normal part of life. And a completely part of life when something bad happens is a grieving period. And it's something we must go through, and there's nothing wrong with it. It is normal. You're not going to stop it. You just have to go through it. You do, right? If you set a fire, the fire has to go through the burn, and then it'll stop. And in the same way, too, your grief also is very similar, as in, you have to let it let it go through. It's a process itself. Yes, it's a huge loss in life. And the thing you have to realize is this. Grief is a regular and normal reaction your mind and your body, like your mind and body, it automatically goes to it. Why? Think about it. If you lose someone, like if I had imagine you've been with someone for like 10 years and all of a sudden they're gone, it is shocking to the mind and body that you will never see them again. Like they're no longer existing in this world anymore. Your body has to get used to it. It has to cope with it. It's like, oh, I'm getting used to them not being there, not talking to them, not seeing them, right? Your mind and your body, they need to go through this process to get used to not these people, right? Or these things not being there anymore, right? It's just about adjusting to change, right? Because when you lose something, you have to adjust to the change of having and not having. So first thing is, you can't think to yourself, I've got to stop. Like you can't go to your friend, hey man, stop grieving. You can't do that. You gotta go through it. That's number one. Second thing I want to give to you, second advice I give to you right now is unreasonable expectations. Expectation is a very, very big thing, okay? The verse I'm going to show you is Isaiah 55, verse 8. And I use this verse all the time because I'll tell you 2 points about it. It says, my thoughts and your thoughts, talking about God, right, are completely different. My thoughts and my ways are different than God. And the reason why it's different is because God knows a lot more than I do. God knows the full situation, but I only know one situation. And that's why it's hard for me to judge the situation or have a certain expectation. And that's when people's expectations become unrealistic. Because they don't know the full situation, it becomes very, very unrealistic expectations, right? And if it's unrealistic expectations, then what happens is people start to think it has to be like this, but it's unrealistic because they don't know the full situation. So let's talk about the 5 stages of grief. What's an unrealistic expectation? People think that the 5 stages of grief is like, oh, you go start with denial. Next step is anger. Next step is bargaining. Next step is depression. Next step is acceptance. And the thing you have to understand is, grief is not a step-by-step thing. What is it? You have to realize that grief is actually like a roller coaster. Grief is something that is erratic and it's unpredictable. Some days you're good, some days you're not. Some days you'll go through good parts of bargaining. Sometimes you might go back to anger, then you push up to depression, then you go back to bargaining, right? It's not going to be just a step-by-step thing. And that's why I don't want you guys to have this expectation like, wait a second, I was at bargaining, but then I went back to anger. Oh, why is it taking so long? Or why is it like this? Why? It's because these are just the general steps. It's the average, right? It's a roller coaster. It goes good and bad and good and bad and good and bad, 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 good and bad. And it takes time for it to go through the process, and it's going to be different for everyone. Right? Everyone is going to deal with grief in a different way. We have to recognize this, right? Why? If you recognize this, then even when other people make it, like overcome grief very, very quickly, it doesn't make a difference. Why? Because people are all different. They were raised differently, different families, different cultures, different values, different religion. Just so many different things change the way how people deal with things, right? That's why some people will deal it with violence. Some people deal it with peace. Some people deal it with going out by themselves. Some people deal with it by meeting tons of people. It is all different from person to person because we've all grown up and we've all been through different situations. There are some people who can overcome it like this. Do you know why? It's because they've been through it so many times. And they've been accustomed to dealing with grief, and they're a lot better than someone who's done it for the first time, right? And if you guys want to know this, you know what the average time of grief is when it's a very, very big loss, like say a death of a loved one? They say the average is about a year. So you got to take that into consideration. It's not this thing where you get over it in 2 weeks. And don't look at your friends and say that, oh my gosh, it's been 3 months already, you should be over this. That's kind of being insensitive a bit, right? You have to realize the average is about a year. It's about a year, right? Which means that some people can go longer and some people can go shorter, but the average itself is 1 year. So, don't sit there thinking to yourself that, oh man, it's already been a year, but I'm still not over it. It's fine. It's fine, right? Everyone has a different time. and let people go through it, let yourself go through that entire process, so by the end of it, you'll really be able to deal with it, okay? The third advice I give to you guys today is grief is healthy. It is a healthy thing. Don't look at it as a bad thing. Look at it's a healthy thing. Your mind and body should go through it because it's healthy, right? In Ezekiel chapter 21, verse 6, this is God talking to the prophet at that time, and he's saying, yeah, go. Groan before them with broken heart and bitter grief. Grief is part of the process of something. It's the reaction to something that is so terrible. It's a reaction to something that you've lost, that you loved. It's a normal reaction, and it's a healthy way of dealing with it. Don't hold it in. Don't pretend it's not there. Understand it's healthy. It really is a healthy thing, right? How you deal with your grief, right? It can actually, it's dealing with the changes in your life, right? You go through the cycle and the process of grief so that you can normalize yourself again, right? It's almost like, say for instance, you're here normal, and then something really bad happens, then what happens is you have to bring yourself back to get back to that normal state you were in the past, right? And it takes time. It's not gonna be like this and then all of a sudden you're there right away. It takes time for you to get back to where you were, and you have to understand it's a healthy process, right? So don't be ashamed of it. Don't think it's bad. Grief is actually really, really healthy for you, right? You need to go through it, right? So when you go through grief, number one is like when you're going through this healthy grief, make sure you acknowledge it. Don't deny it. Don't say it's not there. Don't say it's unhealthy. It's healthy. So acknowledge it, and then you can deal with it better. Once I acknowledge my grief, what happens next is, you should talk to people. They say one of the things that is very, very healthy for people dealing with grief is talking to someone else about that grief, and it helps you to understand it better. It helps you to kind of let out all the emotions, and it actually helps you to talk to someone about that grief. Talk to them about it. Write about it. Some people need to write it down. Write down all the things that you're going through. Write it all down. And just realize when you're acknowledging it, also you have to know that you talk to people, write it down, and it takes time. It really does. The second thing that, another thing when you understand that grief is healthy, another thing that can happen is, one thing I advise you is don't disturb your natural schedule. Right? Of course, in the beginning, you're going to grieve. You might miss work or whatever it is, but don't do it for a prolonged amount of time, right? You need to get back into your regular schedule, right? It is stability, right, that allows your mind to become healthy, as long as you know what's going to happen next. But if you're always like, oh, what's going to happen next? Oh, am I going to, imagine you keep skipping your job for 3 weeks. Then you're going to have another worry. Am I going to keep my job? Can I pay for the bills? Can I do this, right? So you have to think about this is, having a schedule is good for you, right? Having stability and certainty is good. You don't want to add on to the things, right? So keep a good natural schedule, and remember to keep your body healthy too, because part of your natural schedule is eating and sleeping. Sometimes you might sleep less, sometimes you might sleep more, but you want to try your best to keep the regular schedule, right? Keep that schedule, keep your healthy body. Why? A healthy body equals a healthy mind, right? So don't sit there not eating for days, not drinking for days, not drinking alcohol, but not drinking water, all those are the different things. Keep your body healthy too. And if you realize that grief is a very healthy thing, the last thing I tell you is be yourself, right? Be yourself. Don't be so fixated on the grief, because you're going to get into this time of depression. Don't be too fixated on it. You got to still be yourself. For instance, if I'm going to do the things that allows me to be myself, one of the things I won't change is sports. Because sports is a part of me. I want to play sports. I'm not going to take myself out of it. I still need to be myself. I still need to do things that make me happy, right? So don't go out of yourself. Don't go somewhere else, right? Don't be someone else. I know it's difficult and hard, but don't try to change your schedule around. Acknowledge it, but also make sure to be yourself, right? Don't be too fixated only on that grief. But you got to be people that remain yourself. Keep yourself fresh of who you are, right? So for myself is certain things I wouldn't stop. I wouldn't stop this YouTube, right? These channels. I wouldn't stop my sports. I wouldn't stop like going to church for myself, right? Like, these are things I wouldn't stop. It brings me stability and it helps me more than anything else, okay? So I hope that this helped you guys out when it comes to coping with grief. And of course, the big thing I really wanted to tell you guys is more of dealing with your mind, right? Dealing with your mind is, yeah, don't think you have to stop it. Don't think it's unhealthy. Don't be unreasonable in your expectations that I have to get over this in 2 weeks. We have to be those that understand. Yeah, you know, even with the five stages, it's just an average. Sometimes you go 1, 4, 2, 3, 1, and then 5. It really is just different from person to person, right? And like I said, it's not steps. You have to have reasonable expectations. And remember, guys, the average time is about a year. So don't sit there thinking you're doing it too long. And even if you go over a year, 1 year is just an average. So many people go over. All right. So I hope that really helps you guys out with coping with grief. And that you guys can take a look at these whenever a situation comes for yourself or maybe someone else you know. You can use this talk and some of the valuable advice to help you out, to help others or yourself. All right. So that means we're moving into a time of question and answer. So for the question and answer, why? Because I'm not here. What's going to happen is please keep writing your questions. What's going to happen is I will answer the questions on a separate video same week. I will answer the questions on a separate video in the same week, so you guys will get this. We do have some questions that we took earlier about this, so we have 2 questions today. But first, we're going to start with today's free bubble tea of the week, okay? So here's the question, okay? Here's the question. What song did Blackpink sing with Selena Gomez? That's your question, and write it in the room. What is the title of the song? And just keep writing it, and we'll get back to you by the end of these 2 questions we have, and then we'll tell you who the winners are. So let's get into the questions of the day. First, we're going to get into the question from Barbie in New York. Oh, that's kind of interesting, Barbie in New York. Okay, how do we comfort people in grief, right? How do we comfort people in grief? Well, one thing for us is, if you understand grief and how normal it is, what are the proper expectations, then one thing we can do is we can properly support them, not thinking, hey, they should be over it by now. Oh, why are they doing that? We can even see what stage they are in out of the 5 stages, and we can help them out with this, encourage them more. But the more we understand about the stages of grief and how grief works and how it's something that is actually healthy for us, we're actually able to help those people who are in grief better. Because we know what is normal and what people are going through. The ups and downs constant is a normal thing. And if the more knowledge we know, the more we're able to help them. As in someone says, oh, it's been 6 months, I'm still not over it. And the answer is, it's okay. You know what? The average is 1 year, so don't worry about it, right? Take your time. Don't worry. I'm here for you, right? So having this knowledge is a very, very good thing for us. It is. Because once you understand it, then you'll know what is a normal thing and what is kind of abnormal. Like, for instance, if it's been like 6 years, you know there's an issue, right? So you want to be able to understand the situation much better. And once you know it, it's much easier for us to help out our friends and family that are dealing with this, okay? Thank you so much, Barbie in New York. Let's go to Malaysia. This is Junwei in PJ, and he says, I can't help but compare myself with others who overcame grief quickly. What can I do to overcome this? Yeah, and it's true. Comparison is well, I think we did a video on comparison before. I think we did. Maybe not. But comparison is something that a lot of people like to do, right? And to compare themselves. Why? Because it makes them feel better if they did it faster than someone else, or it makes them feel worse if they, if they're slower than someone else, or whatever it is, right? How do I overcome this is you need to first acknowledge one thing, okay? So Junwei, one thing you need to acknowledge is, the acknowledgement you need to make is that you don't know everything. That's the first acknowledgement we have to make. We just don't know. We got to be honest. We don't know. I don't know their situation, and I don't know their situation. And honestly, in my situation too, sometimes I don't even know my situation, right? Sometimes we don't even know, right? Having the acknowledgement that I'm not sure about the full situation, it's almost like this, right? It's like this. Imagine there's a hole in the wall, okay? And someone says to you, put your arm in the hole, okay? So if you have limited knowledge of what's inside the hole, like say you only have like 20%, and all you know is, they made the hole yesterday. but that's all I know. You don't know if someone put anything in it. You don't know what they did, right? You don't know what's happening. You know, like the knowledge is so limited. It's very, very hard to say like, oh, you know, yeah, just put your arm in the hole. But imagine you have 100% information. Oh, they made the hole yesterday. They cleaned it out. There were bugs. They fumigated it. They made it very, very clean. And what's inside? It's 100,000 US dollars. So put your hand in it. You're like, okay. And you put your hand into it, right? Because you have full knowledge, right? If you have full knowledge of someone else's situation, what they went through in life, why they can overcome it faster or slower, then it's very easy to say, oh, this is a comparison. And actually, the interesting thing is, if you really knew the full situation of every person, you would realize that no one would ever do it at the same time. That's why there's something called an average. If everyone completed it in 6 months, 9 days, 2 hours, 3 minutes, 14 seconds, if everyone did it across the board in that amount of time, then there's something wrong with you if you can't do it in that amount of time. But we have averages is because everyone is so different. So the first thing I do say, Junwei, is you have to acknowledge how much you really don't know. It's an important thing. You have to acknowledge, I don't really know the situation. I don't really know what's happening. And when we acknowledge this, what happens next? And it's like, oh, okay. So they did it quicker. And the answer is, they did it quicker. And that's all we know, that they did it quicker. And the next question, if we want to know more, is you can actually talk to them. I'm serious, this is a good thing. Say, hey, how did you get over it so fast? And someone says, well, you know, in my family, a lot of people have died early, and this is the 7th person who's died since, you know, in the last 12 years. And you're like, oh. And then if you understand that you're dealing with your first loss, and they're dealing with their 7th loss, then you're like, oh, that makes sense, right? Hey, how come you're doing it that way? Oh, well, you know, and once you start talking and communicating, you begin to realize why there's these big differences in how people deal and cope with grief, right? So the biggest acknowledgement we have to make more than anything else is, you don't know. We really, really don't know, right? And depending on how much you know will determine how much you can assess the situation properly, right? But in most cases, honestly, guys, most of the people we look at who are coping it better than us, we really know nothing about them. All we know is that they did it faster than us, and that's it. And that's why, how do we overcome this? Very, very easily. You have to first acknowledge you don't really know much, okay? All right, thank you, Junwei, all the way over there in PJ. So that means it's time to figure out who is the person who won today's bubble tea. All right, so as usual, I picked a number, and with this number, whoever has the answer with this number will win. And the answer is, oh, not the answer, the number is 6, right? So the 6th right answer over there on YouTube and Facebook, we will give you the free bubble teas. And who are the winners? The winners are, yes, congratulations for you guys. Awesome for winning this bubble tea. Congratulations. Make sure you take that picture and write to the email, especially with sky@gmail.com, and then we will send you your vouchers for your free bubble tea. And what does that mean? Congratulations to everyone. Those of you who are on Facebook for the first time or joining us for the first time, make sure you click the like button. And if you want to hear even more of these talks, we have like 20 to 30 of them on the YouTube channel, Espresso with Sky. Go ahead and click the subscribe button and smash that notification bell. Why? Because you will get updates and notifications when we go live, and also when we upload new videos. Those of you who want to support us in our ministry on Patreon, go ahead and click that link. And for those of you who want to go into something a little more intimate and deeper and ask more questions and meet people from all around the world, we have Saturday 1 p.m. group Bible lessons, and go ahead and sign up that link. We'll email you the Zoom link every Saturdays, right? So thank you everyone for joining once again. Enjoy your bubble tea, and we'll see you again next week. Everyone have a wonderful day, and see you again, and have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.
It keeps flowing, never running out. Ayy, turn on the nitrous to ignite this. Let me write this love on a letter. I let them know this love got me pushing my weight up. I got it impressed, so I'll stay up. The drip is impressive, I'm way up. My love is unchanging, I'm next up. My love is like a waterfall, it's endless. My love is like a waterfall, it's endless. Oh, you and me, and it's you and me. Oh, you and it's you and me. I poured out my love endlessly like a waterfall. So this waterfall love won't become dry, no. It won't change, no. I won't let you go. You're the only one I want now, so close. Where you put your heart determines where you go. It's just a matter how you said it. Wanna let you know that it's only set on you. For it to come true, I can never put you second long as I'm with you. My love is like a waterfall, it's endless. My love is like a waterfall, it's endless. Oh, you and it's you and me. Oh, you and it's you and me. I poured out my love endlessly like a waterfall. So this waterfall love won't become dry, no. I poured out my love endlessly like a waterfall. This waterfall love won't become dry. It won't change, no. It won't change. I won't let you go. I promise. It won't change, no. I won't let you go. I won't let you go. My love is like a waterfall, it's endless. My love is like a waterfall, it's endless. Oh, you and it's you and me. Oh, you and it's you.